Welcome to the Social Regressive. In a few videos, I've referenced this Weaver Grand Slam multi-stop scope as the weirdest scope that I've ever tested. And in my testing, I've found that it works really well for certain applications. So what we're going to do is we're going to delve into this scope, we're going to take a look at those peculiarities, and see if maybe this applies to certain functions that you have in mind. Now before we do that, I wanted to give a shout out to my patrons of the Destructive Arts. Thanks a bunch you guys for helping me to get certain gear, like some of the lights and cameras and review gear that we have here, and just ammunition, powder, all kinds of stuff like that. So you guys out there, if you're not a patron, if you want to see more reviews like this, in-depth reviews on scopes, in-depth reviews on rifles, fun tests, and accurizing techniques, things like that, then consider just kicking $1 a month out to Patreon. So let's go ahead, let's take a close look at this Weaver Grand Slam multi-stop scope and see what makes it work. The Grand Slam multi-stop comes in two models. There's the 4-16 by 44 millimeter, and then this one, which is the 5-20 by 50 millimeter. They both have a 1-inch tube. Overall length on this high magnification one is 13.4 inches, and weight is 23.2 ounces. So that makes this heavier than that 2.5-10 by 44 millimeter Bushnell Engage that we reviewed recently. And it does make this a little bit heavy for a hunting style scope. But once you dig in and see what kind of things this thing can do, you might see if that weight is worth the trade. The side parallax adjustment rolls all the way down to 25 yards, which is handy for me because instead of putting this on a hunting rifle like most people will probably do with these, I decided to put this on a 22 and see how it could perform in various situations, and it really did fantastically. And this is a good time to point out just the precision and the Japanese manufacture of this thing. It is just very well polished all around, and every one of the dials on this thing just feels perfect. There are no steps in this thing, the tension is just right. This thing feels just wonderful, and even just the contour of the turrets themselves, they're just brilliantly laid out. This whole thing, it's not going to snag on anything. It has a somewhat conical shape on here. And then when it comes to any of the other turrets, you can see that they're nicely rounded across the top. You get traction on some of the sides here, and everything just feels really high precision. As you might expect, the glass on this scope is gorgeous. Resolution is wonderfully high, contrast is great, and you get excellent color reproduction. It also has a really good eye relief considering the fact that this thing does magnify all the way up to 20x, and it's not that difficult to get your eye in the right place behind this scope. Now that we have the baseline stats out of the way, let's take a look at some of the weirdness that I was alluding to. This scope doesn't feature any numbers all the way around if you look at this from the outside. Instead, what you have are these little colored tabs right here. So when you spin this, you get these stop points based on color. And what's really cool about this is, of course, these are going to align with some kind of drop related to your cartridge, but the neat thing is that you actually set these yourself. So right here are the little replacement tabs that you can put in there. So you get a whole bunch of colors. You get yellow, orange, greens, reds, blues, and then all you have to do is just pick where on this inside dial those drop into. So let's take a look at that. Once you remove this top screw, this cap comes right off, and inside this cap there are some splines that mate up with some splines inside this. And this you can kind of think of as the maybe true turret cap. It's kind of an intermediary piece. This whole thing just lifts right out. Alright, so there's the turret down there. This mates up with splines right on top of here. And then you can set the position of all of these little colored markers. You can see that this intermediary piece includes numbers all the way around up to 18 MOA. So all you have to do is just make a ballistic chart and then put your drops in at the correct positions. And one of the neat things is that if you go on Weaver's website, you can actually use their ballistic tool to create a special little chart that goes into the objective lens cover on this scope. It actually has a clear sleeve on it, and this is a very nice objective lens cover. This thing is held in place by a magnet, not by the usual little, like claws or anything like that. It's a very just high polished piece. It's a piece of aluminum, and it has this neat sleeve here, and then you can put in this special chart that they'll create for you, and if you print it in color, it's actually going to correspond to the colors that you place on this dial. And one thing that the website states is that this is a 1/8 MOA per click turret cap on both the elevation and the windage, and as far as I can tell, no, it's not true. It's actually 1/4. Now, one quick note on the positioning of these tabs: you can only place these every 2 clicks. You can't put them exactly everywhere you want, so it's not going to be accurate to the click or to the 1/4 MOA. They're actually accurate to the 1/2 MOA. So you might, in your chart, need to make an indication, okay, yeah, go to orange for 50 yards or whatever, and then give it 1 extra click. The way that you zero this scope is to take your shot and then adjust this actual turret right here. It does include a little coin slot. You can use the rim of a piece of brass, and then you just crank this around until you get your zero just right. Then you take your little intermediate piece right here that has all of your drops set the way that you want. You put that on top, place the cap on, screw this down, and then you're ready to go. I do have one word of caution if you're interested in this scope. This pin right here that you see sticking into the side, and the pin that you see inside this piece right here, these two set up the zero stop. There is kind of a fixed zero stop in here, so that when you are attached right here and you try to turn this dial past that 0 point, it is going to stop. There is an issue with this though, in that you only get 1 revolution of this cap before it stops in the other direction. So once you spin this thing all the way around, it also comes to a stop. This is probably not going to be an issue for most folks within reasonable ranges, but if you want to be able to do extreme long range shooting or anything like that, you are going to be limited by this cap. There may be some things you can do, like backing this screw out and removing it. I did give that a try to see if I could open up some of the distance there. It may be Loctited or something, I'm not sure. I could not back that screw out. Or you could maybe shave that pin off on the inside of this, but just know that the zero stop can be an issue if you are going to have some kind of distance that goes beyond 18 MOA. Weaver didn't stop the innovation with this elevation turret. The reticle on the inside pairs with this perfectly, assuming that you're going to be doing all of your drops using that turret. The reticle is free to just do windage, so you get this nice little target dot in the center, which is it's a really nice balance of fine and being able to find this thing if you're in kind of a more dense environment. And then it just provides windage, which is going to be true at your highest magnification, at least on this 20x scope. At 20x, this is going to measure a true 4 MOA, 8 MOA, and then all the way out you have 12 MOA. So do these differences really make a difference? In my testing, yes, this isn't just a unique scope on the market, it's one that actually makes a lot of sense. It's really slick, and for the first time when I saw the stats on this thing and how it worked, it just clicked. It made a whole lot of sense. I really enjoyed shooting this thing in the matches. I could just set my elevation for the known distances that I was dealing with, and then all I had to do was just think about the windage in that reticle. I think that hunters, especially those in open plains or out in the Rockies, places where you might have long distances to take a shot or really variable ranges, I think they would really enjoy this scope, especially when paired with a rangefinder. If there's one limitation of the reticle, it's that you only get windage for doing any kind of range finding, and it doesn't include a lot of the little intermediary hashes that you might get with certain other milling types of scopes. This will work, and it'll definitely work better than your average duplex or crosshair type scope, but still you just don't have a whole ton of data for ranging, so if you have a rangefinder, I think that'd be a good match for this. And as far as competition shooters go, I think they might find its feature set really interesting too. The typical match scope for a silhouette rifle, which is what I shot in, is going to have an adjustable objective out here, and it's going to have big target turrets and all that. And this actually does kind of fit most of those bills in that you do have a side parallax adjustment right there, and you can set your drops right here. It makes it really quick. Instead of having to think about what the actual numbers are for your different ranges, you just turn to that color and then it just works right there. And this is how it's going to work in silhouette shooting anyway, where you're really just going to be dealing with wind when you finally take the shot. You're going to have that turret set up for your range, and then you just mess with wind. The Windage Turret is a zero it and leave it sort of feature. You just twist this cap off right here, and you get a small dial right here. And this is also 1/4 MOA per click. And all you do is just click this around, and then you leave it for whatever your zero is. And then you just close this thing back up. You can remove this right here if you want to make sure to zero this out, like I actually have on here. You just back this out with a Torx screw, pop this off, re-zero it, just like you are used to with a lot of other scopes. The eyepiece on this scope is the fast focus type, so instead of having a locking ring like you used to get on the traditional hunting scope, this one is always loose and you can move it around. And by loose, I mean it actually is kind of tight. This isn't going to accidentally move around on you easily. There's a fair bit of tension going on here. But what I would recommend for anybody that has this type of eyepiece, and I do this on all my scopes, just make a mark. I've made a little kind of light mark up at the top to indicate that's my diopter adjustment, just in case something does get moved. Both of the multi-stop models have that 4x zoom ratio that I talked about. So this one goes from 5 up to 20. And since 20 is where everything is kind of true inside that reticle, it's going to measure, if it says 4 MOA, then it's going to measure 4 MOA. But the neat thing is, with that 4x multiplier, if you do back off to 5x, then anything that's 4 is going to measure 16, and so on. So it's going to make the math pretty easy. Think of the Weaver Grand Slam multi-stop as a replacement for your very limited hunting style scopes, or as an interesting alternative to a target scope. You easily get elevation out of the way using the turret up here, and then you can just spend your time in that reticle, either addressing windage or leading a moving target. You get this nice flexible zoom range that makes the math kind of easy if you need to back off. Just make sure before you buy this scope that your combination of cartridge and the reasonable distances at which you'll be shooting your targets is going to be within that 18 MOA. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These two videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, the Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the destructive arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.